Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to this channel, especially if you enjoy stories where humanity isn't just part of history, but a force the galaxy never truly understood. Here we tell the best HFY stories, where humans are, not just survivors. They are the echo that never fades. Now to listen closely. It started as a joke. A group of elite alien soldiers were on a mission, routine recon through a dead Terran zone. They laughed about it. After all, humans were myths. Right, ghost stories? Leftover warnings from a time long gone. They mocked the old stories. They said, if humans were so dangerous, where are they now? But then, one patrol didn't return. Then another. By the end of the fourth night, only one soldier was found. Barely. Breathing, eyes wide, mumbling the same words over and over again. They're real. They were waiting. And that's when the laughter stopped. In every military academy across the modern galaxy, the old stories still get told, not as fact, not as history, as training mythology, parables meant to teach caution, discipline, or humility. And at the top of the list of those stories, humans. They're described as unpredictable, primitive, excessively emotional, too reliant on instinct, too stubborn to surrender, too fragile to last. According to official records, humans reached their peak around 4 centuries ago, during the expansion period. They colonized quickly, fought frequently, and refused to be absorbed into larger alliances. They were bold, clever, and loud. Then, just as quickly as they rose, they vanished. No great war, no official collapse, just silence. Their planets went dark, their trade lanes dissolved, and the humans disappeared. Most believed they burned themselves out, consumed by infighting, poisoned by their own ambition. Some thought disease took them. Others assumed they finally realized they couldn't survive in a galaxy ruled by more evolved species. But a few, a very few, weren't so sure. Old veterans, war historians, deep space miners who swore they saw things out on the fringe. They spoke of shadows in uncharted space, ghost signals in ancient Terran code, abandoned satellites still transmitting perfectly after centuries of disrepair. Most called them crackpots. Others called them dangerous. The military called them inconvenient, because the myth of humanity was useful, but only when controlled. Instructors used it to keep cocky recruits in check. Don't get sloppy or the Terrans will come for you. Use cover, or you'll get flanked by a human with a stick and a grudge. Trust your tech, but remember, humans didn't. It became a running joke. Graduation drills featured Terran gauntlets, tactical simulations that recreated ancient human battle strategies. The idea was to show young soldiers how easily outdated tactics could be overcome. The recruits laughed. Humans? Please. They had no genetic enhancements, no neural link reflex systems. They used kinetic weapons and ground tactics. They wore body armor instead of exoshells. They relied on weather, terrain, and misdirection. What kind of species didn't? Evolved beyond instinct, and yet the instructors always ended those drills the same way. They'd lean forward, lower their voice, and say, just don't go poking around old Terran sectors, all right? Some doors close for a reason. But the soldiers laughed anyway, because as far as they were concerned, humans weren't real anymore, just shadows, just stories. And if there was one thing elite soldiers prided themselves on, it was not being afraid of stories. So when Recon Unit Theta 91 got their assignment, an unexplored world in a sector once marked as Terran space, they didn't blink. Simple recon mission, an abandoned planet. A few resources to scan, tag, extract, and leave. No resistance expected, no danger reported. One of them even said it aloud as the shuttle broke orbit. Maybe we'll find a human skull to bring home. Mounted on the E, wall right next to the old jokes. They laughed. Right up until the sun went down. The world was quiet, too quiet. The surface was dry and cracked, littered with the skeletal remains of old buildings, mostly collapsed outposts and faded metal. Towers that hadn't seen light in centuries. No radiation, no biosigns, no power signatures, just wind, dust, and silence. The team touched down at dawn, laughing through their helmets. The briefing had been short. Abandoned Terran outpost, last recorded ping dated 367 years ago. No satellite presence, no orbital defenses. Just derelict infrastructure and possible resource salvage. For an elite recon squad like Theta 91, it was supposed to be a walk. The commander assigned watches. The engineers started tagging structural scans. Drones buzzed quietly overhead. Routine on. Day 1, they found nothing but rust. Old Terran tech. Too primitive to be useful. Hard metal. Thick wires. No digital trace. It was the kind of garbage the modern galaxy had moved far beyond. They cataloged what they could and set up base near. A partially buried bunker, the only intact structure left standing. Still no threats. No signs of life. No reason to worry. Until day 2. That's when the glitches started. It was small things at first. A drone lost signal. Then another. One soldier's wrist pad kept resetting its internal clock. Environmental suits reported minor malfunctions. Temperature readings fluctuating. Air levels twitching between 99% and 72%, then back again. The medic ran a systems check. Found nothing. The techs reconfigured the comms array. Still clean. The commander dismissed it all as atmospheric interference. But then came the shadows. On the 3rd night, the motion sensors triggered. 3 times. Always near the ridgeline, north of the base. Always just after midnight. Thermals came back cold. Visual feeds showed nothing. But the movement logs were clear. Something was out there. The squad doubled perimeter guards, tightened formations. Still, no contact. On the 4th day, the tracking officer reported a drop in drone coverage. "They're not crashing," he said, confused. "They're just not there anymore. No crash site, no signal loss. Just gone." The engineers rebooted the primary uplink tower. It came back online, but now showed anomalous signal interference. Coming from inside the base perimeter. That shouldn't have been possible. The team swept the area. Nothing. Then at dusk, the first team went out of contact. 3 troopers. Standard recon. They were 30 meters from base. Then the radio cut off. Their GPS markers froze. The commander sent backup. The second team found nothing. No signs of struggle, no footprints, no comm devices, just 3 rifles neatly stacked on the ground. Facing the bunker. The same one no one had opened yet. That night, nobody slept. The next morning, the squad was down to 13. 2 more had vanished during night shift. No alert, no scream, just silence and empty boots where a guard post had been. That's when the commander gave the order. "We're leaving." But the shuttle wouldn't power on. Not jammed, just unresponsive. And when the pilot ran diagnostics, he found something burned into the memory core. Not a virus, not a code, just one word. Written in ancient Earth script, formatted for human eyes. Stay. At first they thought it was sabotage, internal, a traitor among them. Nothing else made sense. The shuttle's power core was intact. No sign of corrosion, no sign of damage. The diagnostics simply refused to complete, as if some unseen logic. Gate had been reprogrammed. The engineers tore apart the control module. Every system was perfect. Just not working. It was as if the ship had decided not to leave. The squad pulled back into the command tent. Tension thickened. Helmets came off. Weapons stayed loaded. The commander radioed the orbiting satellite for evac protocol override. There was no response. No connection. Just static. One of the comms officers pulled the raw data stream from the uplink. It wasn't random noise. It was intentional. Buried in the frequency, modulating every 0.94 seconds, was a repeating message in dead Terran binary, "Not finished." From that point on, paranoia set in. Daylight became brief. The planet's rotation had shifted. Every hour of light felt shorter. The air grew heavier. Strange sounds began to echo off the ridgelines. Footsteps, too soft to track, too regular to be wind. Sensors caught nothing, but motion alerts triggered every few hours, always on the outer perimeter, always just beyond visual range. Then came the footage. One of the engineers reviewing cam logs saw a frame skip. Just one. She paused the feed. Frame by frame, she advanced the recording, and there, in the space of a single flicker, a figure, tall, still, watching. Its body was obscured in shadow, but the posture was unmistakable. Shoulders broad, hands loose by its side, head tilted just slightly. Not robotic, not armored, alive. No visible markings, no insignias. Just the shape of something humanoid, standing perfectly still. The recording team enhanced the footage, clarified shadows, cleaned light distortion, and when they reached full clarity, every voice in the tent fell silent, because there, on the chest plate of the figure, was a symbol, a barely visible patch, torn, faded, but there, a white circle, split down the center, and beneath it, ancient Terran lettering, unreadable to most. But the database recognized it, the emblem of an old Terran Special Operations Unit, Sentinel, division decommissioned, lost, reported extinct 2 centuries ago. The commander froze. The Sentinels weren't just soldiers. They were disappeared, blacklisted, classified, said to have been the ones sent to places no one else returned from, ghost units. Operating in silence, buried when Earth went quiet, and now, one had been recorded. Alive. The squad prepped for evacuation again, on foot this time. The shuttle was a lost cause. The plan was to reach the upper ridgeline and call for orbital pickup. They left in groups. Only 2 ever made it halfway up the slope. The rest? Gone. Not a scream. Not a sound. Only gear left behind, stacked neatly or laid in place, like it had been put down, not dropped. One of the remaining soldiers tried to fire into the shadows, just fired wildly, in rage and panic. Her rifle exploded in her hands, not from overheating, not from malfunction, from a command override. It wasn't possible. Their weapons were hardened, encrypted. And yet, the internal logs showed the fire command had been intercepted, rerouted to loop back into the core and trigger a self-destruct, done remotely, cleanly. The medics tried to treat her, but the wound was too precise, as if someone knew exactly where to aim, exactly how to break the weapon, just enough. That night the commander recorded a private log. His voice was hoarse, shaky. This isn't a hostile force, this is judgment. Something's been watching us since we landed, testing us, measuring us. We laughed at myths, and now I think we're being reminded. He paused, then whispered the last part as if even the darkness might hear. I don't think they ever left. I think they just stopped talking. That was the last time anyone saw the commander. His boots were found by the bunker door. Clean. Aligned, facing forward, and the bunker, still unopened. The camp was nearly silent now. Only 5 remained. The medic, 2 engineers, the comms officer, and a private who hadn't spoken since the 2nd day. No one slept. No one left the tent alone. Their eyes were hollow, their armor scratched and dirty, their hands twitching from too many days without rest. And still, the sky offered no help. Their last orbiting satellite had vanished from the scans sometime during the night. No flash, no re-entry, just gone. As if the sky had swallowed it whole. The remaining comm systems were stripped down and reassembled twice. The engineers rebuilt the antenna array with salvaged wire, even grounded it directly into the soil. They boosted the signal, hardwired their suits, bypassed every encryption protocol, and at last, a ping. A signal burst. barely stable. The comms. Officer locked in and hit transmit, cycling through every emergency code across all known networks. A voice message, encoded, blasted into the void. This is Recon Unit Theta 91. We've lost 17. The site is not abandoned. I repeat, this sector is not abandoned. We are not alone. Possible hostile contact of unknown class Terran signature. Request immediate extraction. The signal cut, not jammed, interrupted. The sound that followed wasn't static. It was breathing, deep, steady, not mechanical. The squad froze. Then came the voice. Low, human, calm. You shouldn't have come here. Not a threat, not angry, just final. The audio cut again. Lights in the tent flickered, then surged. Sparks hissed across the panels. One of the power cells exploded, non-lethal, but enough to throw the medic into the wall. The engineers dragged him back and sealed the door. No footsteps followed, no weapons fired, just wind, and a sense of waiting. They had one drone left. Just one. A small aerial scout, short range but functional. The comms officer launched it with trembling fingers and routed the feed directly into the visor HUD. The drone climbed, turned slowly, and panned toward the bunker. And there, for the first time since arrival, they saw it, open. The massive blast doors were slid aside, not forced or broken, simply opened. Inside, darkness. Total. Absolute. Except for one flickering light, a motion sensor still powered after all these years. Still functional, still recording. They zoomed in. Movement. Something tall, broad, humanoid, wearing armor like stone, layered and worn, not shining, absorbing. Light, as if it had been designed to vanish into terrain, to blend into planets long abandoned. The figure looked up, straight at the drone, and raised its hand, not in greeting, in warning. A single flat palm. Stop. The drone feed cut out. Not jammed. Not broken. Denied. That night, one of the engineers snapped. Grabbed his gear, muttered something about walking out and asking them what they want. No one tried to stop him. They watched him walk to the bunker. He didn't hesitate. He stepped through the doors and vanished into the dark. No scream, no sound, just gone. They never saw him again. The next morning, the remaining three prepared their final message. They re-rigged the power cells, bypassed every limiter, and directed the signal straight toward the galactic comm grid. They didn't send a tactical report. No coordinates, no calls for retaliation, just one sentence, and they sent it in every known language. They're real. They remember, and they are still here. Then they destroyed the transmitter, not to keep the secret, but to honor it. Because now they understood this wasn't war, this wasn't contact, it was a message, and the message was human. The signal reached the galactic relay grid 17 hours after it was sent. It was faint, fragmented, wrapped in incompatible formatting and archaic encryption. Most AI filters flagged it as corrupted garbage and moved on. But one system, an old research net buried deep within the outer archives, caught it, not because of the signal strength, because of the language. It was Terran Standard, version 3. A dialect not spoken in over 300 years. One used only during wartime transmissions encoded with linguistic markers no other species had ever adopted. And once the core message was reconstructed, it spread fast. They're real. They remember. And they are still here. At first, most dismissed it another hoax, another fringe cult trying to stir up fear. But the Military Oversight Division didn't laugh, because they had been watching the same sector, Sector 12FR, for years. Marked as dead, designated resource void, no confirmed energy readings in a century. And now, 2 probes sent to investigate the signal site had failed to return. The third, more heavily shielded and remotely piloted, transmitted 2 minutes of footage before being ripped from local space. The last image it captured, boot prints, in Terran gravity spacing fresh. A high-level summit was called. 12 intelligence commanders, 3 planetary governors, 1 cultural archivist who hadn't spoken at a military table in decades. The footage was reviewed. The voice, clip isolated. And there was something else, buried deep within the signal, riding below the message, a sublayer of data. Compressed into the waveform, designed not for attention but for recognition. It was an old Sentinel unit code. Specific, authenticated, live. A ghost unit, long declared KIA, now pinging from a sector thought to be uninhabited. One commander whispered aloud, "If the Sentinels survived, what else did?" The room went quiet, because that was the real problem. It wasn't the one message. It was the implication. Humanity hadn't been wiped out, hadn't collapsed, hadn't been conquered. They had stepped away, and now, someone had stepped back. Not to rejoin the galaxy, to remind it. Word of the signal leaked within a week, not officially but through the back channels that always existed. Smugglers talked about the Terran ghost planet. Black market traders pulled ancient Earth relics from storage and doubled their prices. Historians dusted off forbidden archives, and among field units whispers began, "You hear about Theta 91? They walked into the dark, and something walked back. One of them made it out. Says the humans never left, just went quiet." The official assembly stance was clear: misinformation, unverified signal, sector under review. But soldiers on the fringe started asking for reassignment. Exploration teams rerouted missions away from old Terran space. Civilian travel dropped 17% within 2 months, and yet, not a single retaliatory order was given, because no one knew what to hit. There was no enemy fleet, no bases, no known origin, just a word. Terran and a realization. You cannot defeat what doesn't want to be seen. You cannot prepare for a legend that chooses when it becomes real. And so, the debrief concluded with no action, no declaration of threat. Just one entry into the confidential log of military command. Legends confirmed. Do not pursue, because now they knew humanity wasn't extinct. It was patient, and patience is the most terrifying weapon of all. The archivist knew they were breaking protocol the moment they logged in. Accessing red-locked databases without a full tribunal was grounds for erasure in 3 core systems. But this wasn't curiosity. It was necessity. Because the signal from Theta 91 wasn't just noise. It matched, exactly, to records stamped and sealed during the final years of Terran presence in the galaxy, records thought lost. Records that had been deliberately buried beneath layers of diplomatic denials and quiet purges. And they all pointed to one thing: the Sentinels. Officially, the Sentinel Division had been humanity's last line of planetary defense, urban warfare, black site recovery, strategic disappearances, but unofficially, they were something else. They weren't deployed, they were planted, sent to distant, unstable zones, places where diplomacy had failed, where corruption had grown too bold, where other species refused to tread. And they didn't just fight. They observed. They embedded themselves into terrain, into systems, into cultures, disappearing into the shadows of planets too unimportant for scanners to care about. It was said that once a Sentinel team was deployed, Earth would simply mark the page and move on. No follow-up, no report, just patience. When Earth finally went quiet, most assumed the Sentinels had died with it. But now it looked like they had never stopped working. The archivist pulled up a series of old mapping overlays, roots from the final Terran deep expansion phase, entire clusters of worlds unexplored since, and when they laid the coordinates of the Theta 91 mission over one of those ancient maps, it aligned perfectly, not just with a Terran settlement, with a Sentinel hub, one of the few locations never confirmed, never investigated, and quietly removed from all navigational charts 2 centuries ago. The mission hadn't landed on a random world. They had landed on a graveyard full of guardians who had never left their post, and that changed everything. The galaxy had long believed humans were extinct. But what if extinction had been intentional? What if humanity hadn't fallen, but had decided the galaxy wasn't worth its voice? And what if they left behind watchers, not to protect themselves, to protect the rest of the galaxy from itself? For decades, the core powers had fought wars, brokered fragile peace, and let entire civilizations fall under corporate rule, all while laughing at the myth of Terran discipline, Terran stubbornness, Terran madness. But now, those same leaders were sitting in silent rooms, staring at ancient maps, tracing lines they once erased, because those lines were returning, one by one, and the stories once told as warnings in dusty classrooms now carried a different weight. The one about the Terran captain who led his squad into a no-win battle and was never seen again until his enemies started disappearing. The story of a single Terran warship seen drifting silently past a star that collapsed a day later. The tale of a ghost unit called the Sentinels that never surrendered and never died. They were legends, yes, but now they were also coordinates, and the galaxy understood the message Earth had left behind when it walked away. You're free to do as you will, but understand, we are watching, and we are very, very patient. It's easy to forget what doesn't speak. Easier still to pretend it never existed. For generations, that's what the galaxy had done with Earth. Not out of malice. Not even out of arrogance. But because forgetting was convenient. No more lectures on Terran ethics. No more complaints about unregulated power or unchecked expansion. No more stubborn voices that refused to comply just because the majority said so. When Earth went silent, the galaxy sighed in relief. The humans were difficult. They questioned everything. They moved fast. They broke things. They refused to fall in line. So when their systems dimmed, when their trade lanes went cold and their diplomats stopped showing up to council chambers, the other powers didn't investigate. They celebrated. But now they understood the truth. Humanity had not died out. They had walked away, not in weakness, not in defeat, in protest. They saw what the galaxy was becoming, what it had already become, a place where profit beat principle, where truth was bent for convenience, where power silenced those who remembered how things used to be. And humanity, tired of shouting into a void, had made a choice. To step back, to vanish, to let the galaxy believe it had won. Because sometimes, letting others forget you is the strongest move of all. Now the reappearance of a single Sentinel unit had cracked that illusion wide open. The footage, the signal, the survivor. It all pointed to a single, undeniable fact. Earth had been waiting, and it had done so with discipline no other species could match. No retaliation, no broadcasts, no demands, just quiet and preparation. They let the galaxy forget the old stories. They let the jokes fly. They let the myths fade, all the while knowing that someday someone would push too far, send soldiers into the wrong ruin, dig into a place that was never meant to be touched. And when that happened, Earth wouldn't have to respond. The Sentinels would already be there, not to reclaim, not to punish, to remind, to rise from forgotten bunkers and ruined worlds, step into the light, and whisper the words the galaxy feared the most. We never left it because Earth didn't want a throne. It didn't want revenge. It just wanted the galaxy to remember the most important rule. Just because we're quiet doesn't mean we're gone. And now, after centuries of silence, that memory was returning, faster than anyone could stop it. The story of Recon Unit Theta 91 spread farther than any weapon ever could. It was never officially acknowledged. No press release, no warning broadcast, no footage leaked from government sources. But it traveled anyway. Whispers in military halls. Fragments of audio passed from smuggler to smuggler. A single sentence burned into the side of a deep space cargo. Holler by a pilot who refused to explain why. They're real, they remember, and they are still here. In the weeks that followed, strange reports began surfacing. A weapons depot on a forgotten moon suddenly found empty, its guards alive but confused, each claiming they fell asleep. A prison ship, infamous for its black market slave trade, discovered adrift, every door open, every prisoner gone, the crew unharmed but terrified. One word painted across the bridge wall in Terran script: observe. And in far-off systems thought to be beyond the reach of law or consequence, satellites long considered junk began powering on again, broadcasting a single signal, a pulse, rhythmic, constant, old Terran binary. Its translation? This is your second chance. No fleet arrived, no army landed, no declaration was made, just silence. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was charged, because silence is a language, and when it follows a message like that, it speaks louder than any voice. The galaxy didn't erupt in panic. Instead, it grew still. Leaders began looking over their shoulders during meetings. Corporate executives hired linguists to study Terran syntax, just in case. Commanders in remote systems requested transfers or built new bunkers underground. And the common people? They remembered. The old stories, once mocked, now told quietly. Again. Fathers spoke of the Terran grit. Mothers whispered about the ones who never ran. Children learned that not all ghosts are gone. Some simply choose to wait, because legends, when left alone, tend to fade. But when they're disturbed, they echo. Through ruined bunkers, through forgotten codes, through the silence between stars. Not to conquer, to remind. And now, burned into the last encrypted log of a fading orbital station, just hours before it vanished from the registry, were 3 words: we were watching.